If you get an assistant that can maximize your calendar, maximize your schedule, keep you doing the things that make you money, keep you doing your main thing, that is a game changer.
Hey, welcome back to the episode. On today's show, I have a guest with me today, Matthew Martin, a 20-year experienced contractor and the owner of Home V, which we're going to dive into here in a little bit. But Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brad. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Now, I met Matthew out at the IBS show earlier this year. He had a booth set up for Home V, and as I was walking by, I noticed it. And I was like, oh, this is something that I'm interested in. So we had a quick little conversation, and then it's taken us a little bit of time to to get this podcast scheduled. But here we are. We're going to talk a lot about business and specifically dealing with a lot of the employees and industry, like training and just that whole thing of owning a construction business that a lot of contractors struggle with. Right, most contractors are phenomenal tradesmen, but we get hung up with the business side of it and all the complexities that go into that. So I'm excited to get going on the show. And so let's just start with a little bit of brief history. Matthew, just give me a little bit of background about you, like how we got to starting Home V and, that kind of journey.
Absolutely. So went to Middle Tennessee State University, went through their construction management program and launched my own home building company here in Middle Tennessee in 2006. And father had spent a career, almost 4 decades with national home builders. And so really grew up being introduced at a low level, walking on job sites with dad and just kind of always knew I was going to be in construction, I was going to be a contractor, and I was just going to continue to build homes. And the industry changed a lot. It changed a lot in 2008, 2009. It changed a lot again in COVID. The world over the last 20 years is just different. And so through nonprofit efforts in Central America and specifically initially Honduras, we tapped into just an amazing opportunity that wasn't expected but impacted our business. Project E15 is our 501c3 that we started, where we're an aftercare program for children rescued out of trafficking. And a couple years after starting that, and just building a lot of confidence, learning a lot about Honduras as a corporation and an education system and people's gifting and talents in education, I had to figure out, man, how do I hire some of them? And realizing it's, kind of the call center capital of Central America, of the Americas. It's huge in this virtual assistance that has been growing, that I personally had a lot of negative experience with. But on that same token, I found myself in 2021 in the boom of construction, really having a hard time holding on to people. And as a business owner and constantly feeling like I'm training people out of the industry who would just jump right as soon as I get them trained up going, a few months later they're putting in their notice and going somewhere else. And talking with other builders that I network with across Middle Tennessee and other states as well, finding that this is not a common thing for us, but this is happening everywhere. It's just really hard to find people in the industry that are experienced, but also that stability that you need in knowing that there's loyalty in the workplace, right? That we just kind of lost. And so Home V was launched initially out of a need for staffing, where we built a training program and multiple roles that can be done virtually, that were a lot of our office jobs. But as the market has softened slightly and as the industry has continued to shift and change, it is now been one of the biggest impacts on how we've been able to lower cost and continue to keep our profit in the black, because this has had a huge impact on our bottom line. And so Home V was birthed out of one need and then has continued to be exactly what we needed through the industry shifts for multiple reasons.
So what led to you? What was the need there that you had where you thought there's got to be a better way, and then ultimately starting Home V? Like, what was that need that you had
Yeah.
in your business?
So the two roles that we were having the hardest time as a builder in Middle Tennessee, which has just been a huge growing market. We also operate in Central Kentucky, and then we've done some things in Alabama and Florida as well. And one of the two hardest roles that we just seem to be a revolving door within our organization is, on the one hand, customer service and warranty. It seems like young people have a really hard time not only grasping, but wanting to stay in that role that can be confrontational between a builder and a client, really navigating through what their warranty is, helping educate and inform and set up right expectations, and then work through that customer through the scheduling and all the dynamics and the variables that come with service and warranty. And so that was a role that seemed to be a revolving door with us, where it was every 6 to 12 months we had a new face, which isn't good for our customer base, right? And what was oftentimes happening in that role is people not just leaving, but that seemed to be a stepping stone into being a project manager somewhere else at
Mm.
another builder. And then the other role that was really high level but seemed to be revolving was that of an estimating position. Somebody that's coming in that's not only estimating homes the way we wanted estimated, but all the fiduciary information that of who you're using and what prices that you're doing, and your kind of trade way of doing things, that it seemed that everybody as builders were coming in, that was a high position that our competition would put out there to grab an estimator from one company. And again, it seems like every 6 to 12 months we're replacing that position during that job market. And what was difficult is you couldn't find anybody experienced in Middle Tennessee. And so what we're doing is we're bringing either kids out of college or people from out of the industry and spending a huge amount of time investing in them and training them to get them onboarded, just to see them leave within 3 to 6 months of really beginning to operate at the level that you were hoping they'd get to.
Yeah. I mean, we've all, if you've had a business for more than a day and you've had employees, you've all dealt with employee issues, right? I mean, there's like leadership things that you need to be a better leader about. And then there's, things that dealing with employees and their personal stuff. And I think
That's right.
well, we've probably all struggled with this at some point or another. Did you find that they were leaving like for more money? Somebody was just dangling more money and they were leaving? Was that the main thing?
That was exactly what was happening in our market. Is someone would waive, maybe sometimes the difference of even $1,000 a month, which is a big. I mean, that's a lot of
Sure.
money,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're finding them on LinkedIn, and there was a lot of what I call poaching, right, happening between builders. And what was happening on the one side of the spectrum is I had my managers not extending the management capital that they used to in investing, because there was almost between the my upper level guys, my what I call my key players, they were having a hard time really showing all the cards, because it had built an expectation over 3 and 4 and 5 years of the growth, housing growth and housing boom that had been taking place. They had a hard time really trusting and hoping that, and it's not the development of their skills, but specifically the fiduciary information. And so there's a couple of things that they wanted to stay close to, or relationships that they wanted to stay close to, because at the same time, what was happening in Middle Tennessee was not just poaching of employees, but man, we had a huge labor shortage, right? There was material shortage, and coming out of COVID, and it was so there was a lot of that going on that was also expending a lot of management capital. Now, on the flip side of that coin, we're also dealing with a lot of individuals we're bringing in out of the industry that were just not high performers. They weren't going anywhere, but it was the management capital being taken, keeping them off Netflix, keeping them off, their phone, and
Yeah.
doing things that are distracting their work time, that was expending a lot of management capital. That when we brought in a trained, dedicated team out of Central America working in these roles, well, in the workplace in Central America, they don't bring a phone into the office, right? They got lockers outside. The professional culture there is drastically different. And so, we found the productivity level as well, not only the stability, but the productivity level was a huge game changer.
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially like how the US was 50 years ago, right? Like
Right.
people actually had a good work ethic. I mean, there wasn't cell phones 50 years ago, but to that point, like you weren't distracted, you went to work. And so a lot of these other countries outside of the US, they don't have those kind of work ethics. So how did you go from recognizing this need, right, of some of these key personnel in your business, administrative type positions, to starting Home V? Like, how did you get from A to B on that?
Yeah, well, as I started doing it, there's a few buddies of mine that are also contractors, and as well as some subcontractors, some flooring companies, and cabinet companies, and other guys that were experiencing some of the same things I was. And they said, "Hey, man, we'd love to get in on this and, help me find somebody that, maybe it's doing cabinet design or flooring design or estimating for them or customer service or, back office accounting, things like that." They were really having a hard time finding people as well. And, I mean, even getting people to show up to an interview sometimes is very difficult. And so we began working with them, and it was exceedingly successful. It was successful for us. It was successful for them. And at some point we go, you know what? This is helping people, right? We should exploit this. But before we did that, we go, we really need to do a better job training and create a training program so that all the hurdles that I personally had to overcome, training myself, the months it took, as well as some of these other companies that I've been working with for a decade or longer did as well. I don't expect everybody to do that, right? So we built a training program with a guy named Etzel Charles. Etzel is, man, he's been in the industry almost 50 years and very connected with the NAHB guys. And he has an organization called Market Graphics Research, which is kind of a competitor with Metro Study. And he's a housing economist and really influential, especially in the Southeast. I forgot how many states he covers, but I think it's 20 or so different states. He does national housing forecasting. And Edsel, very connected as well with the National Home Builders, helped me build a training program for 13 different key roles within the housing industry. So obviously, service and warranty being a huge one, estimating, purchasing assistant, online sales, and a data clerk, purchase order processing, marketing and graphic design, and so on and so forth. That isn't just training in general in the job, but specifically in the residential and commercial construction industry. And so it's about a 3-week crash course that every individual, despite their background or with their education, we bring them in and we put them through the training so that when one of our clients is considering interviewing somebody and onboarding them, they already know what the NHB standards are, right? They already understand kind of the fundamentals from a foundational standpoint of the business, to where you're not having to teach them what a 2x4 is, right? But they're coming in with some basics that are easy to build upon. And, how are you running your business specifically? How do you do things? And focus the training efforts there as if you're hiring somebody with some basic knowledge within that industry.
Gotcha. Okay. So before that, though, like before you got to kind of working with some of your buddies and stuff, like how did you even come up with the idea of going to Honduras and bringing people from not bringing, but starting that business there to then get people working there? Like, how did you come up with that idea? Were you using VAs in the
Yes.
past? Like, how does that come about?
I did use VAs in the past, or I attempted to, which failed miserably. And we never imagined ourselves doing something like this. But when we set out to open and launch Project E15, and we had been going on about 3 years of doing that, and had gotten to the point we were really dreaming and being imaginative about expanding our nonprofit and what we were doing in Central America. In November, we're expanding out into El Salvador, which we're really excited about. And we were looking for a means, some motivation from a friend who also has a nonprofit in Honduras, created a similar concept where he has a coffee farm. And this coffee farm that he has is the main source, the main funder for his nonprofit, which is called Children in the Mountains, where he brings clean water and clean energy and education to children in rural and remote areas within Central America. And this coffee farm is the number one funder of what's happening. And talking to him, he said, you really need to figure out what are some things that Honduras offers that can become leveraged for the financial benefit for what you're doing on the nonprofit standpoint. And so that was really the idea when we began. Well, that happening at the same time, and it was really a God thing of those two coming in aligned and seeing what it's flourished into today is one of our now number one funders of what we're doing with Project E15, a 501c3. So 100% of the profits that we make from Home V goes towards what we're doing in ministry and nonprofit work and humanitarian aid in Central America.
So you figured out how to work with Honduras nationals to build this business. It's a nonprofit that you guys started down there. And do you predominantly work with like the survivors of the situation, or is it anybody? Like, how is that set up?
So we do focus mainly on children who have been rescued out of trafficking as an aftercare program. The children that we receive are with us on average 7 to 9 months before they get to go back home. And if they get to go back home, if they have a home to go back to, if not, then we do permanent childcare and housing and really creating a family unit. Beyond that, we have 15 permanent children with us currently that will age out with us, that we've essentially adopted in as family, and will continue to be that for the rest of their lives. Have an amazing team down there that focuses not only on that side, but then on the other side of things for the specific traumas that come with children that are rescued out of trafficking scenarios. And however, we do participate a lot with other organizations that are focusing on children, homeless children, widows, and who are really doing a good job in various parts of all of Central America, and really doing a co-op effort of making as big of an impact as we can. You know, as a home builder, one of the things that we've always gotten involved with is just homelessness, period. And I think that has been a natural in the heart. When you love providing a home, you understand the burden of someone not having something to call a home.
And
And
that's the part of the nonprofit that's allowing these people to basically get a living wage, like have a place
that's
where they
right.
can get help, right, from that trauma and stuff, and then put them on the right path, provide them with training, provide them with a living wage, and then actually allow them to, you know, have a normal life for them down there.
That's right. Now, we haven't hired anybody that we've helped. However, we are one of the number one best places to work in Tegucigalpa. We pay significantly more. I mean, it's not a good place to work. Most of Central America isn't. A lot
Yeah.
of what we consider third world countries are not great living conditions. They're terrible hours. They're underpaid. Everything is a struggle. And what we do is we create a great working environment. We pay more than our competition significantly. We're paying a living wage. And because of that, nobody leaves, right? We have huge stability. In over 2 years, we've had zero turnover. And
Wow.
so we have the confidence that when we are bringing someone with a client, that not only are they going to kill it, they're going to do a great job, but our client doesn't have to worry about them jumping ship.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm glad you corrected me on that. So the if I misspoke or didn't say it clear enough, you have a nonprofit that helps the survivors, and then the business side of it, the virtual assistant side of it, the revenue generated from that is what funds the nonprofit side of it,
Correct.
correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Perfect. I didn't think you were like putting 8-year-olds to work in a call center and trying to make them. So I just wanted to clarify that in case there was any confusion, anybody listening. So
Yes.
you kind of have like a normal business operation, and then the proceeds from that are funding the nonprofit, but it's all umbrellaed under one big nonprofit kind of
That's right.
organization.
That's right.
Perfect. I love it. And one of the things that as someone who's used virtual assistants from all over the world and freelance contract labor for different things, a lot of times you run into time zone issues, right? It's 12 hours difference. And so with them being in Central America, we're on the same time zone. So having an estimator or a customer service rep who's going to work the same hours as you is definitely a benefit versus someone on the other side of the world. They have to work midnight, change their entire lifestyle to kind of match your hours.
That's exactly right. Time zone is huge. They're working when you're working, but anyone that's doing what we're doing, specifically to the small business, and I don't know anyone who's doing what we're doing, how we're doing it, but other VA type companies, most of them are in the Philippines or India or much, much different time zones. And let's face it, 2 a.m. and 2 p.m., you're getting a different kind of worker, right? They're the headspace they're in
Yeah.
and the amount of energy and focus they're able to give. A second big component is the fact that we're talking about virtual assistants and remote work, but I am not a believer in work from home. That's not been a big thing. We have people here at my office working when they're there. And so none of our back office, none of our clients, team members that they're working with at Home V actually work from home. So they're remote, but they're actually in a workspace. They're within a corporate office building with on-site managers there to assist each client. And so from the time zone, as well as the fact that they're here on site, I think are huge game changers compared to a standard virtual assistant company.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have two virtual assistants that are in the Philippines, but they're more project based. So it's not like they're answering the phone, so like they can do it
Right.
on their time. It doesn't affect me at all. And so, but there are challenges there, right, with some of that stuff. So you've made this as easy as possible to hire a virtual assistant. And that, by the way, if you're listening, that's just a fancy name for saying somebody that helps you virtually, like they're not physically in your location. It
That's right.
doesn't mean that they're just an assistant, like an executive assistant kind of person. But you've enabled them to have the training, like core training on basic systems, most common knowledge and things around the construction industry. And I think we talked before, but you even train them on some specific like CRMs or different softwares that they may come in contact with. Can you speak a little bit about that? Hey, just a quick timeout from the show. If you're a frustrated contractor who's dealing with low profit margins, stuck working on the tools every day, or doing free estimates for people who are never going to hire you in the first place, I invite you to my private contractor community, the Profit Club, where contractors just like you are adding 2 to 3 times more profit each year without producing any more jobs and finally getting completely off the tools to never do another free estimate again. So if you're ready to increase your profits, stop doing free estimates and get off the tools, then all you have to do is click the link in the show notes to learn more about the Profit Club and see how it can easily 2 to 3 times the cash in your pocket, give you a proven sales process that will convert more jobs with ease and get you off the tools once and for all. And the best part is you can do all of this without having to produce more jobs than you currently are. Click the link to learn more. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah. So when we're onboarding a client who is sends us what we call a staffing request form, and this is after a first initial consultation meeting, they'll say, "Hey, yeah, I'd like to interview some people," and so they send us a staffing request form, and in that they're sending us the job title, the job description, but also any softwares they're going to be working in. And for a lot of builders, they're using Builder Trend or Pro Build or Procore, something off the shelf. Sometimes they have their own internal system, right, that they've built, and as well as secondary and third party ones. Well, when we're training up, when they hire someone and we're training somebody up to start working with that client, we're going to get them Builder Trend certified or Pro Build certified or whatever that is. We have access to their training programs. And so they're coming in not only proficient in our training program that we're building the building blocks of whatever role they're going to be doing in the industry, but also very proficient in that CRM program or that specific software program that they're using, which really allows them to hit the ground running. And what we also see, I would say the most common thing that we see is we see organizations, builders, who are utilizing one of these, but they're not utilizing it to its fullest extent.
Oh yeah.
And I think the guys in leadership, they would like that more. It's just not everything's gotten embraced. And when they start working with someone from our team that gets assigned to their team, they see that that is an initial game changer, and they begin getting the total value of whatever CRM program they're using.
Oh, I see this all the time, like almost daily. You know, a contractor's like, "Hey, I need an estimating software." They go pick one up, and it's not just an estimating software; it's a CRM and a project management and invoicing and all this other stuff. And they're only using like 10-20% of this capability.
That's right.
And then if you have somebody who understands that, can come in and say, "Hey, if we actually implemented, another 30-40%, it actually would make your life much easier."
That's right. That's
And
exactly
so
right.
having, I mean, not to pick on contractors, but they typically aren't the most tech savvy individuals. You know, they're hands on. They know how to use their tools, um, and so that can be a challenge for a lot of them. So I can see where that would be a benefit for somebody who actually, has more experience within that software itself. And I'm
Yes.
assuming, like you mentioned, the major players, you already have a lot of those training manuals and all that stuff in place. If it's something that's you've never heard of before, how do you handle that? I mean, do you kind of go out and try to find some information, or how do you handle that situation?
Yeah, we have ran into roles or ways of doing things that we haven't done. And, with that, we have a basic fundamentals of the industry that we put them through. And with that, there's some roles where we're working in and looking to the client and going, hey, you're really going to have to spend 3-4 weeks training this person. In some cases, we do those weeks at no cost, right?
Oh,
Because
okay.
what's important to us is that our clients aren't having to pay to significantly train, right, in those areas. And so those are when we run into those very unique situations, we make it really easy for the client, or at the least inexpensive for the client, to overcome that hurdle. Because what we know is while we've had zero turnover with any team member with any of our clients, we have almost zero turnover of any of our clients, and almost 90% of every contractor that is onboarded with us is growing their company with us, which means if they started with one, if they started with three, or however many, within 12 months, they are adding more. And they see this as a scalable way that they can scale their business, which is really exciting once they understand that the asset that this really is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and even if you weren't like, if you hire someone locally, you're still going to have to train them on that software.
That's right.
I mean, very rarely, like if you were hiring an estimator or an office manager or some kind of support position, very rarely are they going to know how to use the same software that, unless it's just the company they came from use the exact same software. And that's not a very high percentage. So in most cases, you're going to have to train that person up. And if you don't already have a training, system in place, then you're going to have to do it. Somebody's going to have to train them. And if you're
Yes.
if you're a smaller contractor, maybe it's you and a project manager or whatever, it's going to be you. So you're going to spend, all your time for the next, like you said, 3 to 4 weeks training them up on how to do that. So I think you've really done a fantastic job on that aspect of it, just to help them, get them up to speed. Obviously, you can't train them on every single platform and every, possible scenario. I mean, even if you just pick one like Builder Trend, 10 different ways of using that software itself, but knowing and understanding the basics is going to allow the contractor to start at a running pace, right, versus starting from from a dead stop. And
That's
that's
right.
going to allow them a lot more quicker to implementation of that personnel that they hire.
Exactly. We have, and I love that you mentioned that, because, we do have clients that have 150 plus employees, and they have a lot of staffing with us. But we have contractors that they're going, man, I have one employee and I'm just not big enough to do something like this. And we go, no, we're actually a better fit for you than we are the guy with 150.
I would agree.
And when people onboard with us, because we have a lot of small contractors that have one person with us, and that person's wearing multiple hats, right? And so they're learning multiple job descriptions. And because we're geared towards the small business, I get that, right? I remember when there was just two, three of us running, and we're all doing five different things. So I tell them, the best thing about us is if you don't have that training program yet, you don't have that job description, well, you're going to do it like you would everyone else, just like you said. But now you have someone on your team that has an administrative type background that has the capability to start writing their own job description, start putting their own training based on how you trained them. They just created their own training program, and which is something we did with our organization when we were growing it. I remember looking at my team. I'm like, there's five of us now, and we've been here and doing this too long, and we've grown, but we can't come hire HR just yet. And so everybody's going to spend the next week and they're going to write their own job description, and they're going to write their own training program and their own standard operating procedures. And I remember our first round didn't look great, right? But we
Yep.
got some stuff on paper, and and we have just boilerplate, blanket, standard forms that are helping these small contractors also get organized and having people equipped to go, hey, let me write your job descriptions out in a way that you can see it and easy and wrap your head around it, and standard operating procedures and things like that. We can work with wherever that builder is at any given time and help them build something meaningful that lasts over time.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room for a second. And I know you've had this
Absolutely.
conversation. People that say, yeah, but you're hiring outside of the US,
Mm.
right? You're hiring people, you're not supporting the US economy. What do you say to that argument?
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of that in our industry, as well as a little bit of a stigma,
Hmm.
right? That comes with our industry. And that stigma starts not virtually, but here at home. And that question of Hispanic trade base and, the things that we hear in the rumor mill of people hiring people that aren't legal, et cetera. The first is this virtual assistant service is 100% legal, right? Number two, you really have to look inwardly and say, is this best for my business in America? Is this going to help me grow my business in America? Is this going to help me serve more customers in America? And quite frankly, for me, this has grown my business to the extent that I have hired more staffing in America, because while there are some things that you can do remote, you cannot do all things remote, right?
Right.
And so this has made me a better employer by being a way that I can grow my business. We're saving a significant amount of money. We'll say position to position. But what that has allowed me to do is pay my people here at home more, right? And so I am a more competitive employer because what I'm saving here, right? I have almost less to zero turnover over here because I haven't changed what I'm paying in salaries. I'm able to pay my key players here more, have more competitive bonus programs that I wasn't capable of doing before. And so if you look at it as a silo of just, well, this is hiring a company that provides service in Central America, comparatively to going, how does this work for the overall program? I see it as a greater benefit when utilized appropriately. And when you've had the kind of experience as an American employer, especially in the entry level type jobs, an administrative assistant, that was a role we were trying to hire for. I remember when all this was happening, we had 12 people set up to interview. 12 people called in advance to confirm the interview appointment, specific time scheduled for them to come. Four of the 12 showed up. Four of the 12 showed up.
Yep.
And then we made a hiring decision that day. First interview, not something we normally do, but there was one that stood out so significantly because, we weren't super excited about anybody, but there was one that we were, and it was really competitive. And we were afraid if we don't give her a job offer, she's just going to jump, right?
Yep.
She's interviewing other places. We give her a job offer, she accepts it. And then the day before she's supposed to start, she lets us know she's not coming.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, yeah.
so a lot of these roles, I'm going, I don't know if we've replaced anyone, you know?
Well, yeah.
Uh,
Well, you made a good point too about, because I think anybody will agree that sometimes we have to overpay for certain positions of the
Yes,
work they're doing in the US, I mean, right? Like
that's
I
right.
have to overpay for this position for really what kind of value they're bringing to the business. By eliminating that, where you can, take it to Home V and hire a virtual assistant to do this task and, arguably even better, right? Then at a
Yes.
fraction of the cost, then you can take those funds, just like you said, and now you can reward better, or you can hire, you can grow or reward more. So I'm
That's
all
right.
on board with that. You don't have to, you had a much more political way of responding. My way is it's like, well, get over it.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I say, get over it.
Well, and one of the things I hear often too is going, well, your business model is profiting off of paying low wages.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up
And I
next.
respond to that and I say, well, my first thing I'm going to say is 100% of the profits go to nonprofit, and this is not a high profit business model. I promise you. Number one, we're making very little margin each person, so it is a volume operation. And the second is this: is you don't need to compare the United States economy and the Honduras economy. For me, you can compare where we're at in Tennessee and California,
Oh, yeah.
right? Or New York to Oklahoma, or some of these states. We realize that, well, the economies of scale, of currency, of cost of living is drastically different, which is why I love to go back and remind them we're paying very well a living wage in Honduras,
For them, yes.
right?
Yeah.
For them, for them. And it is different than us. And it is almost double what the average pay there is. So we are very proud of what we do, the jobs we're bringing in, the employment opportunity, and when people begin to also challenge or question, well, what is the treatment like? And we invite them, come look, come talk to them, let's get them on video. We'll give you a tour of the office. You can start meeting some people, and because it's really information that's needed at that point.
Yeah. There's two stigmas you got to break through. One is just hiring a virtual assistant, right? Like someone who doesn't work physically with you. Like a lot of guys, like, no, I got to talk to them. I'm not going to send an email or a text or whatever. It's like that's one stigma, is just hiring a virtual assistant, even if it's just, they're working from their house down the street, right? And then the other
Right.
stigma is going outside the US and finding, staff that way. So really kind of breaking through both of those. And I can't remember what year it was, but it was probably at least 5, maybe 6 years ago. I hired my first virtual assistant in my construction business, and all they were doing, it was a part-time position, but all they were doing was any phone calls that were coming in and voicemail and emails that came through on our website was taking that information and then creating a lead for them in our construction software, because back then, stuff didn't talk to each other. So you'd have a lot of double data, entry type things. And that was it. It was like an hour a day. I hired a virtual assistant to just take that information and put it in there so that it was easier for me. And just that little thing made a world of difference in my business when I was smaller and trying to, juggle everything.
Yes. Well, I tell people all the time, if there's one thing that I would love to just spend an hour and teach you as a contractor, as a business owner, as a key player, is if you get an assistant that can maximize your calendar, maximize your schedule, and I say it this way, keep you doing the things that make you money, right? Keep you doing your main thing, and anything that's not you doing your main thing, putting that and make that someone else's main thing, that is a game changer. You talk about tripling your efforts. So many times we think, man, we need another project manager. And you go, do you? Do you need another project manager? Or can you, if you got a really good project manager and they're amazing, and you go, man, I wish I had two of them. Well, sometimes you can duplicate them from taking the paperwork away, taking the busy work away, right? And get them doing double of the thing that they do best, that you're really paying them for, right? And then what does that look like at every level? Which is oftentimes why those CRM programs aren't being operated to its fullest.
Yeah.
right? Is people are too busy doing their main thing. They don't have enough time to really organize it, even though we know the value that really is when we take the time to do it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Whenever I finally hired an office manager, and it was several years in my business before I hired one, I always, and then once you hire, because here's what happens when you hire your first office manager is like, you're like, I don't really have enough stuff. Like, I don't have enough administrative stuff for them to do, right? Maybe 20 hours a week. But how do you, I'm like, don't worry, you will find plenty of work. Like,
Yes.
things that you never even thought of that are going to add value to your customers, to your employees and your business. Soon enough, you'll probably be overloading them with too much work, right? Because there's so many things that they can take on. But then I would always make the comment of, if things like went terribly south and I just had to lay people off, my office manager would be the last person I would lay off. I would lay off
Yes.
my field staff and put my tool belt back on and go back out in the field before I would let go of my office manager, because of the how important that job is, of
Yes.
removing all of the things that I hate doing in the business, administrative wise. It was such a relief for me.
That's right. Well, unexpected blessings with our organization that we see our clients share is we do have a heavily Hispanic trade base. And so, and we have a purchasing assistant that's out of Honduras, but is operating as a purchasing assistant. And not only do they overcome language barriers, but there's a connection and a relationship that's built that I wasn't able to build at that same level, right? Which gives a better level of performance and a longer lasting relationship, which has been huge. Productivity, as I mentioned earlier, is huge. And we train down there just what value means. We tell people that the hourly wage is a lie, right? No one pays you for your time. They pay you for what you produce in that time. And
Right.
that's a fundamental culture builder that we employ. And one of the things that we typically hear first within the first few weeks of them working is the shock that they have or the impression that they have when they hear someone come to them and say, "Hey, I have finished everything that you've had me to do, and I have 4 hours left. How else can I add value to your
Oh
organization?"
yeah. Yeah.
And getting and hearing that obviously from an employer, that's music to our ears. We're going, "Oh my goodness, when's the last time that's happened? When's the last time?" It's like, uh, it's as crazy as thinking a country or a state can balance its budget, right?
Yeah.
Or them coming
It,
back and saying, "I have more time. Give me more to do."
I mean, I'm not like a super world traveler, but I've been to a lot of different countries and some other, lower, second, third world countries type situation. I think most Americans don't realize the work ethic of all the other countries outside of the U.S. is is pretty much better than ours. And again, it's kind of like go back 50 years, maybe 60 years, to the 1950s, and so like we had a pretty hard work ethic. Americans worked their butts off, and
Yes,
that's where a lot of these other countries are with their work ethic. My virtual assistant that does a lot of my video editing and stuff
that's
for
right.
me, who will edit this podcast, like I don't talk to her. I don't get on a Zoom call. I don't chat with her maybe once a quarter. And she does her job every single day without, hardly any issues. I don't have to worry about her.
Yes,
I mean, she's just phenomenal, and so like I don't think Americans understand how much more impressive
yes.
people outside of America in terms of work ethic are. They're actually really hard workers. Well, our time's coming to an end here, Matthew. I want to give you a chance to share a little bit where people can find more about Home V and the solutions that you guys are providing for builders and contractors.
Absolutely. Easiest way to find us is homev.biz, and that's BIZ. All of our socials, all of our other contacts, and all of our information is there. First questions we get asked is, "Am I paying an international company?" No, we are stateside. We're based out of Nashville, Tennessee. You are paying an American company, right? But we are a service provider. There's no W-2s, there's no insurance. You're not hiring anybody, you're hiring a service, and we are training up somebody to provide a service as if it's a staffing solution. We are on all the socials. We put some good content out when we can just to help any of the imaginative And our first meeting, for anybody interested, no obligations, let's just talk, right? And we like to we'll jump on any of the virtual chat tools that you like, whether it's Google Meet to Teams to everything in the middle, and really eager and willing to help you troubleshoot on whether or not this could be a solution for your organization.
Absolutely. And guys, just so you know, like anytime I recommend somebody, if I bring a guest on the podcast or any kind of software, I do my due diligence because I don't like recommending, businesses or services that don't do a good job for you. And I've had several conversations with Matthew, and I love what they're doing. I think you'll be really, really impressed with their operation. And if you're struggling with any kind of administrative type positions in your business that can be done virtually, I'd highly recommend checking them out. As he mentioned before, Matthew mentioned before, they're very affordable, probably more affordable than what you might think, and it can add a huge, just a value add to your business overall, and really change the trajectory of your business. So check them out. We'll make sure to put all of the links to their socials and website in the show notes. You guys can go check that out. Matthew, thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing that with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I'd like to ask one last question. I ask all my guests this. What's a book that you're currently reading or one that you would recommend?
Yeah, well, I love that you asked that. So I'm actually rereading Seven Habits. And I know that's probably one that's been mentioned before, and it's my
Many
third
times.
round on it, and it's one of my favorites. And the thing that I love about it is I'm constantly gleaning something else. So powerful book, and constantly going back and figuring out how do I continue to operate at 100 in all areas.
Yeah, that's a classic. I mean, that's one of those ones you should read at least once a year, just to brush up. So that's
Agreed.
been recommended a lot, and I've read it. It's a great book. I probably need to reread it again too. So thanks again for being on the show, guys. You know where to find us on all of the social media platforms. You can just search for Hammer and Grind Podcast to find us there. And remember, until next time, profit is not a dirty word.